All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. We appreciate you joining us. My name's Jacob, and my brother Justin is with me. And before we get started today, we're just gonna talk about a few topics. What have you been playing right now, Justin?
I don't play as much as I want to of anything lately. But the last game I actually really played was Doom, the Dark Ages, the new one. And it's Doom. You're punching demons in the face and killing lots of bad guys with big guns and all sorts of stuff. It was cool, but I'm very glad that it was on Game Pass and I don't want to say I got it free because I'm paying for Game Pass, but
Right.
I'm glad that I didn't go out and spend like $50 on it or whatever. I really enjoyed all three of the new Doom, the modern day Dooms or whatever, but the formula's wearing slightly thin. I'll just say that. So I'm glad I didn't pay for extra for it, but I enjoyed it. It's
Well, I feel like
good,
a lot of people have said that.
good
I've
fun.
I've read that. I mean, no one said it's bad, but definitely people
Right.
are saying it's not, breaking, any ground
Yeah,
or
it's not
anything.
it's not quite the same as when the very first I don't even know what it was now. It feels like it was recent, but it wasn't. It was like 2018 probably or something, or 2020 when the first Doom was, it was made again or whatever. And it was just kind of like such a breath of fresh air compared to old school Doom that it was awesome. And now the awesomeness is wearing off. But
Right.
anyway, so that's what I played. How about you? You
I
playing
mean,
anything?
well, the funny thing is I talked about like let's talk about what we're playing, because we're busy, we're doing all this stuff. It's like, well, are we
And you're
even
not
having a
playing
chance
anything, are you?
to, right? Well, you know what? I did start playing some Hollow Knight again the other day, just because I was like, oh, I love Hollow Knight. I could pick it up and play it almost anytime. So I started a new game and played it for like an hour and a half the other day, and I could play that. I could play it anytime, pretty much. The game it's so fun. It's so beautiful. I really, really am itching. Now, funny thing is, we've got Switch 2 coming, and hopefully we get a hold of one. Now, there's craziness going on with pre-orders being canceled right now and everything. And, do you wait at midnight? Do you go to GameStop? So I don't know if me and Justin are going to have Switch 2s right off the bat. As soon as we get them,
I'm not.
we will talk about it as soon as we get it. But what I was going to say, the reason I was bringing that up was I really want to play Tears of the Kingdom again, but I'm like, why do that right now?
Right.
Wait
Yeah.
until the Switch 2 comes out and play the upgraded version. So I'm very much looking forward to Mario Kart. I think it's going to be fun, but I really want to play both those Zelda games again.
Yeah.
But I just need to wait, you know.
I
So
agree. I would not play it again unless I had the Switch 2 in my hands or whatever. Not that they're not worth playing again, but knowing
right,
that you can play upgraded, yeah. I mean, but some people don't feel it. Like my good buddy John. Hello, John. he claims he'll never play them again. Basically, that they're great games. He loves them, but they're not replayable. And a lot of people have that opinion about some of those those types of games, just because there's not. I don't know. I guess there's just not a lot of replay value. In nothing changes. I don't know. Just his opinion.
I don't know if I
I
agree
mean,
with
I have
that.
lots of games. Well, I don't necessarily either. In fact, I've played through the first one twice already. I have not played through Tears of the Kingdom again, but there's tons of games I've not played through and tons of games I have replayed. I mean, there's some games I've played
Yeah.
5 times over and over. You know what I mean? So I've played through
Yeah,
The
no,
Last of Us and God of War. I don't know how many times.
right. I mean, the original Legend of Zelda, I couldn't even tell you how many times I've played it. I've played through Breath of the Wild twice. Now, one time I got everything except for all the Koroks. I didn't get all them, but the second time I just pretty much beat the game. Tears of the Kingdom, I never did even get all the shrines or everything,
I
and so
didn't
I kept
either.
thinking like I need to go back to that. But then, especially in the last couple months since we knew there's going to be an upgraded version, I was like, I'm just going to wait and I'm going to play it
Yeah.
again, and
Well,
because it's a
and
really good game, but there is a lot of problems with slowdown and some other things.
oh
And
yeah.
it
Well, one of the things I was going to say that you just reminded me of, one of the reasons I played the Breath of the Wild twice was because there was a hard mode, and I played it the second time on hard mode. So, same game, but at least it was harder. There was some differences, whereas Tears of the Kingdom doesn't
right,
have a hard mode. So it truly is no different if you play it a second time. It's just playing it again, but
right, and I did also play it in the hard mode, and
yeah,
it was fun because especially in the beginning when you're so weak, it almost turned it into a Metal Gear Solid type game where you have
it's
to
too
really
hard.
think and
It's too
take.
hard at the beginning. The first
Uh,
dude whatever they're called. I can't even think now. It's called moblins or whatever it may be.
Bokoblins or whatever?
Well, I don't even know if it might be. It might supposed to be a bokoblin, but like it's not. It's like the bigger one, like the moblin or whatever. I think.
Oh yeah,
Doesn't
yeah,
matter.
right, yeah.
Doesn't matter. The point is, on the original, yeah, you like walk out there and there's a dude and you can beat him up with a stick, and then the second mode or hard mode or whatever, he's the black colored version and he's got, you know, a shiny sword or something, and it's just like you said, you could hit him 50 times with your stick and you just keep breaking every weapon around and he's not dead yet, and it's like and then you go up over the first hill and there's the Lionel and you're like, there shouldn't be a Lionel here yet. You're
Right.
having to,
Yeah.
like you said, you're crawling through the weeds just trying to get to the cabin or whatever.
It definitely makes you think, will they have a hard mode for Tears of the Kingdom? I mean, I know they said they weren't gonna do
I
any
don't think they're going
DLC,
to.
but you think they would. I don't know. We'll see what
I
happens.
think they spent a lot of time making it and all that stuff, and they just don't care. You know, they
Yeah,
just
I mean
they want to move on to the next project.
well, we don't want it to be, 2030 before the next Zelda comes out, so
Well, no, absolutely not. But they obviously spent, the majority of the Switch's life cycle working on that game. So, I mean, that
Right.
doesn't surprise me really that they want to move on. Nintendo's not, they've done it more recently, right? But they're not big on rehashing games. Like,
no, I mean, usually a lot of people are mad about
we
Tears
get
of
mad. Yeah, we get mad because we're like, Nintendo, do this, please.
right,
Like,
yeah, and some people are mad
give
about
us
the
more of
Switch
this.
too, because they think, like, it's the same thing, and Nintendo's always, iterating, which is not true at all. Lots of the systems were mostly the same, and you can't make some argument like, "Well, the N64 was" well, but that was the introduction of 3D gaming. That wasn't, like, because they just wanted to do something different, but I don't know. I digress. That's a different topic, of
Yeah,
course.
right.
What we're here to talk about today.
What? Don't say it.
What?
Don't say it yet. Don't say what we're
Okay.
here to talk about yet today.
Okay.
Because
All
I'm
right.
going to ask you. Oh, I'm going to ask you a question. Actually, before we even ask that question, I'm just going to say real quick. And Jacob has heard me say this to him already, because of course we talk not on the podcast. But I just was going to say real quick. One of our goals that I kept telling him, or at least one of my goals with this, is I wanted us to get to 10 episodes of this podcast. Okay, because allegedly, I didn't do the research, but like 70 to 80% of podcasts, they say, never make it to episode 10. So I wanted us to make it to episode 10. Now, doesn't necessarily mean we are successful, but at least we had the gumption to hit record 10 times. So yay for us. And thank you. Thank you guys for watching. I know that most of the people watching are just our friends or people that know us, but that's still very cool that people are willing to stop by and listen to our voices. So
Well, yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
it.
I mean, to be fair, even though they're our friends, they might say, "Hey, you guys suck. We don't want to listen to you." And no, we've gotten a
Yeah.
lot of compliments from our friends. In fact, I get text messages from people, and they're like, "When's the next episode coming out?" Or, I got one yesterday that said, "Are you guys not doing the YouTube thing anymore?" Because it's been like a month almost since our last episode. Just things have been busy and crazy, and
Yeah.
that's not what we want. We want to do one once a week, but just life sometimes gets in the way. But
Very
we're
difficult.
determined to do this, and I know there are people out there that want to start YouTube and do it, and it's like Justin said that they're staring at their screen. It's like 3 days later, and it says 0 views. So I'm very happy with the number of views that we've gotten, and we know there are some people out there that we don't know listening to us, and so yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, guys, and I hope you'll keep on listening and give us feedback, give us comments, so we can get better. Because we want to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it may still be slow going. We're still not going to get an episode a week right now. Probably there's a lot going on, like Jacob said, in personal lives, but we'll do the best we can. So again, appreciate it. So moving on. So I'm going to ask you a question. This is kind of cheating because Jacob and I have already talked a little bit about what we're going to talk about, but I'm still going to ask the question. I'm going to ask the question because I have a point to this. So take Nintendo completely out of your head. No Nintendo.
Mhm.
What's the first thing you think about when it comes to gaming? Whether it be a character, a game, a company, anything.
Well, honestly, probably PlayStation now. At this point in my life, all these years later, if you say, well, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? It's not Nintendo. I'm probably going to say PlayStation. And I'm going to guess a lot of
Right.
people would say that. That certainly wasn't
It-
what I would have said growing up.
Right, exactly. So that was kind of the, like, say, spoiler alert. Like Jacob was going to say a minute ago, we are going to talk today, and maybe about Sony a little, but we'll see. But Sega, and that's why I asked him that, because I think, like Jacob just said, I think most people our age, my age, and probably even just a little bit, maybe a little bit younger than me, maybe I'm probably on that cusp, but a bunch of people would have said Sega, especially in a little bit earlier age, because when we were growing up, that was it. Mario and Sonic, Nintendo versus Sega,
Mm-hmm.
that was it. Even the other gaming things that were there, they just weren't that popular. It just, that wasn't the rivalry. The only rivalry was Nintendo versus Sega. And to your point, I think you're right now. I think no one thinks of Sega. If you ask people,
No,
what about gaming? Any modern kid, especially, doesn't. Sega's just a game company that makes a couple of games, or they might know the Sega characters that are in Nintendo games even now, right? Just Sonic
right.
versus Mario and
Well,
Olympics
I
or
was
all this
going to
kind of stuff.
say, I wouldn't be a bit surprised that a lot of younger people that know Sonic, of course, because Sonic's still very well known, but they wouldn't necessarily know the word Sega.
Yeah, maybe, maybe not.
I
Whereas
don't
we
know
did,
that,
well,
but
because when the system came on, what'd it say? Sega. It
right.
literally said it when you
They
turn on a
wanted to
lot of
make
the
sure you knew
games.
what you were playing, you know? It was so yeah, I mean, Sega. The Sega Genesis is what most people are familiar with, came out in 1988 in Japan and 1989 in America, which, that's kinda crazy because I, um, I don't really remember it, like, that early on. It was a few years later, when the Super Nintendo was out, and you
Yeah.
started hearing about it more, but, you think, "Oh, that's kinda crazy," 1989. And it wasn't the first system we even had in America. Before the Genesis was the Sega Master System, and before that they had some other systems in Japan that didn't come to America, I don't think, and more Atari, better than Atari. But I mean, they went. Part of Sega's problem, most people will say, is they jumped on stuff too quickly and didn't support what they had, and they're kind of were always like that because even in their early days, they went quickly to what they called like the SG 1000, SG 2000, and then they released the Master System, which was did okay. And actually, what's hilarious is the Master System did like really awesome in like Brazil and like continued to sell there until like into the 2000s and sold like something like 8 million units just in Brazil. Like people were still making games for the Master System. I'm sure there's some weird licensing and import things and stuff like that. That's why that happened. But did you know anybody that owned a Master System?
No, not that I know of.
No, no. One person, and we didn't. You're going to know these people, but we didn't really know them. My mom had been working with this church pastor guy, and his sons. They had a master system, and they were at our house a bunch. Actually, my
That
mom
kid named
babysat them.
Damien or whatever.
Yes, yeah. Damien
Okay.
and his older brother Aaron. They had a master system, and one time we went to their house, and me and him played Double Dragon on his
Okay. I
master
remember
system.
that. I wouldn't have told you that was a Master System. For some reason, I almost thought that was like a PC version of Double Dragon, like in my memory or
Yeah.
something.
Nope. But they're the only people that I knew
Of
that
course, there
had one.
wouldn't have been a PC really around at that time, probably. But
No.
anyway,
So yeah, they're the only people I knew that had one. And I mean, they sold enough units that you think you'd know a few more people, but no, but the Genesis came along and I didn't know anybody that had it in the beginning. Now, here's the funny thing. I don't think that I
I'm
could
ready to
tell you a
laugh.
lot of people. I know. No, I'm just thinking about how the fact that like it was such a rivalry. It was. They're like Sega, Nintendo and the commercials and go back and forth and the Genesis did actually catch the Super Nintendo for a little while.
But
But
you don't know very many people that had a
I don't. Did you?
Sega.
Cuz I don't.
Not a
In
ton.
fact, I can't name a single person, really.
Well,
You.
us.
Yeah.
Um, our cousin Smiley had one. Our cousin Jared. Eventually. Um, I don't think Arford had one in his house, but I could be mistaken, but I don't think
Not
so.
that I
So no,
remember you saying.
off the top of my head, Smiley is the only other person I can think of in our personal lives growing up that I know for sure had one. So
No,
no, I didn't know a ton of people that had them.
I think that There are a few of the basketball guys, I think. They had one and that's all they had. They had, like, one copy of John Madden and, like, NBA
Right.
something, and
Yeah.
that's the only games
Yeah.
that they had, because that's all it was when we were young, the nerds were the gamers, and sometimes other people had game systems, but they didn't have very many games, or they only had, like, this one basketball game, and
Right.
that was it.
Yeah.
And we talked about before.
Or sports games only, right? In general, they would just
Right.
have a bunch of sports games. Yeah. Whereas we were the
That's
opposite. We never had the sports games. In fact, I did have a sports game though. I for the Sega. This is jumping ahead a little bit, but I had. Oh my God, what was it? Bulls versus Blazers. Uh, I think.
Yeah, you're
'Cause
right, you did.
I think there's a second one. I think there's a different one, something versus Bulls or something. But anyway, yes, I had the Bulls versus Blazers. That was a long time ago, and I remember picking the Pacers because I thought, well, we're in Indiana, I'm gonna pick the Pacers, and all I did was shoot threes with Chuck Person. If anybody out there is an NBA person, remember Chuck Person. So anyway,
I think maybe
No,
I had, no, we borrowed Double Dribble in the NES. Didn't I have, like, King Griffey Jr. Baseball or something like that in the
I
Super
don't think
Nintendo?
so. We borrowed it definitely from people. Which, by the way, I still stand that Ken Griffey Baseball on the Super Nintendo is the best sports game I've ever played, and I still stand by that, to be honest. But I digress. I don't think you and I owned a single sports game. Other than that basketball game for the Sega. I
Yeah.
really can't
I
think
mean,
of any other sport game.
I can't either.
Now, if you count boxing as a sport, I had George Foreman's KO boxing on the Sega, which is awful. One of the worst games ever made.
He was too busy, selling George Foreman grills instead of boxing. No, I had International Superstar Soccer
That's
for
right.
the
You
64.
did. And
And we
I
played that a
remember
bunch, actually.
tormenting you on that game.
Yeah.
I remember juking and jiving and you getting pissed.
I just
a good
remember
game, actually.
don't you remember how the voices were only recorded, like, one way? So, it'd be all excited, and the guy's like,
Yeah.
"And it's a goal for Brazil."
Yeah. Right. Yeah. They couldn't, there was no nuance back then. They couldn't do that. That's funny. So,
But, so the Sega was known for the sports games, though. That's what,
right.
one of the things I was gonna talk about was people said the
Yeah.
Genesis had better sports games and more sports games.
Sports games, and as you and I have alluded to before, not alluded to, outright said it. But the big thing was that, kind of jumping ahead in our conversation a little bit, but Sega versus Nintendo, right? Was Sega had the adult stuff, right? They were the real raw and gritty, whereas Nintendo was for babies. That was the image they tried to sell, at least. So, and the big one that you talked about before we brought it up was the whole Mortal Kombat thing, right? Blood in the Sega version, not blood in the Nintendo version. And that really helped, actually, Sega's rise and helped their numbers because people thought, oh, sweet, there's blood and this is for the cool kids, and so that helped them out a lot. Now, let's go back in time real quick before we say anything else. Do you remember where we played the Sega? Because in my head, there was a demo unit of Sega that we played at. In my head, it was Kmart. But the last time when we were talking about standing in line, you said Hills, and I think it was Hills that we played that Sega demo unit at.
So it's very possibly Hills, but I also remember playing one at Service Merchandise.
I don't know what that is, so I don't think it was that.
I mean, it was another store. They were kind of famous for layaway. They
People
would
out there, what's layaway?
So
layaway, by the way, is basically I can't pay for this now, but
Right.
hold on to it for me. I'll come back with money, I promise, and buy it later. So basically, a full service that now, if you asked any store to do, they'd be like, "No, we can't do that. Get out of here."
No. Well, here's the thing I don't understand. Why don't you just come back later when you have the money? And
Because
then
you don't
buy
want
it?
someone else to buy it. You don't want someone else to take it. Because
there's
people
probably
use
gonna be-
layaway. By the way, my mom used our mom used layaway,
yeah.
right?
all the time. Yeah.
And I think it wasn't unique, right? I don't think, I'm not saying our mom is a Wall Street savvy investor, but layaway wasn't just something for like poor people. Everyone used it back in the day, or I shouldn't say everyone, but lots and lots of moms used layaway. Okay. But what cracks me up is that I think they did this with like clothes, right? Like, oh, this fits me. I can't buy it right now, but I don't want someone else to buy the medium, so I'm gonna put it in layaway, and it's just like, and by the way, we say layaway so fast, it's almost like one of those I don't know. I don't know if it's because we're country bumpkins, but it's lay away. Like
Right.
lay this away for me.
Hmm.
Like I feel
Well,
like we're old men explaining this concept to people.
I do think you could like if something was on sale and you put it in layaway, then
Ooh,
like
lock
you
in
could
that
keep the
price.
sale. Yeah, you could lock in the sale price, And I know a lot of people like our own mom used it like because people aren't good at saving money. But if they
Right.
know like, well, I have to make this layaway payment or they're gonna put my stuff back on the shelf,
Oh, see, did you have
then
to make
it kind of
payment?
forces you.
I don't
Yeah,
remember.
a lot of times you did. You had to make some payment on it every so often,
Oh,
or
see, I
they
don't
would put
remember
it
that.
back out.
Now, our mom also just used it for like basically, as you guys may remember if you've watched all the episodes and know that Jacob specifically and us a little bit would sneak into the Christmas presents. Our mom began to use it as a way to hide the gifts, put them in layaway, and come back and get them later, right before Christmas. That way, they're not just hanging out in the house the whole time. So, anyway,
Service merchandise kind of was famous for their layaway stuff, and I do think now someone's gonna correct me in the comments if they actually watch this, but I think they kind of like advertise things like 4 easy payments of this amount and stuff like that instead of just like the normal price. But I thought maybe we might have played it there, but we might have played it. I think we did play it at Hills too.
seems to like stick out in my head now that it was Hills.
Now, do you remember? Did you ask mom? Did you say I want a Sega Genesis for Christmas, or she
I
got it without?
I have no idea. I really don't. I don't remember.
Because we were,
I'm,
I mean,
I'm
we were
sure I could have
Nintendo
said,
people.
"Hey, I want this," but
We were Nintendo people. Um, yeah, I don't remember like, oh, all my friends have this and we have to get it. I just remember, yeah, we got it and we played Sonic.
we're
Uh,
we're Nintendo people. You make it sound like we're wearing our overalls. We don't play Sega around these parts, boy. Get out of here. We're Nintendo people.
I mean, there was a lot of other choices. I mean, there was the terrible choice of the TurboGrafx 16. I think we mentioned before that our cousin Jeremy he asked his dad for a Nintendo for Christmas, and then the guy who went to get it. Now I don't know where he went, but the salesman was like, "Oh, you don't want a Nintendo. You want this TurboGrafx 16. It's the hot new thing."
Suckered him. Suckered him. That guy was getting kickbacks
Well, the
from
funny thing was
someone,
that
whoever made the
system,
TurboGrafx 16. I don't even know who made it.
well, the funny thing is, well, NEC and the PC Engine is what it was called in Japan. It was a very successful system. It just didn't get to support it. It did not get the support it needed in America to succeed. So Genesis and Sonic they go hand in hand. Sonic the Hedgehog. That's what I think most people probably our age think of when we think of Sega, Sonic the Hedgehog, and then like you said, um, the sports games and the mature image. But I don't know that they really had any more mature games than Nintendo. But they
Probably
would play it
not.
off. There would be ads, like showing some kind of like racing game, with race cars and gritty looking, and then they would say, or you can play Nintendo. And they would show Mario Kart, which Mario Kart's awesome. So I don't know what they're talking about, but
What was the saying? Sega does what Nintendo don't.
yes,
Something
just
like, or Sega do what Nintendo. I don't know. I know. I
yeah.
agree.
Well,
It's kind of a stupid
Yeah,
saying, but
Sega does
I
what
think it
Nintendo
caught on
don't.
though.
Uh, I remember the commercial where it was a Game Gear commercial, and the guy, I think it's Ethan Embry. Yeah, he's sitting on a bench and he's playing a Game Boy and he picks up a squirrel and hits himself in the head with it. And he goes, "Oh, the colors!" And then it says, "There's an easier way to see colors when you game. Buy a Sega
Oh
Game
dear
Gear."
God! And 8,000 batteries because you're gonna need them.
Right?
The Game Gear was a
It
battery hog.
chewed through the batteries. Maybe
How about
my head
that?
keeps itching.
So Smiley, our cousin Smiley, like I said, that had a Sega. He had a Game Gear as well. He is the only person I know of that had a Game Gear. I don't know anyone else who had a Game Gear.
Heath had a Game Gear.
Oh, he did. Okay, all right,
Not a Genesis, but he had a Game Gear.
right. So obviously, there's tons of things we could talk about with Sega. I mean, I don't know if we need to do deep dives like we did Nintendo or whatever, but just off the top of your head, can you name the games that you remember that I had on the Sega? I bet we can't think of too many of them if you want the honest truth. I mean, I definitely think of some, but
We had Sonic and we had Sonic 2.
yep, definitely.
Yeah, you had that Bulls game. Um, did we have Shining Force? Or did we
Absolutely.
only have Shining Force CD technically?
No, I had Shining Force 1.
But I know we had Lethal. I mean, I don't know. I know you had the Sega CD. You got that later,
Well, yeah,
and we had
yeah. With
well, it
so we,
came with Sewer Shark, and you had
right.
Lethal Enforcers.
Yep.
Ooh, didn't you have Primal Rage for the Sega Genesis? The
No, I
dinosaur
had that.
fighting game?
That was my first PlayStation game.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, that's a
Um,
bad game for your first PlayStation. That game sucks.
honestly, when I got the PlayStation, there wasn't a lot of games. I mean, you know, plus I was a dumb kid. I'm the same kid who on the Sega had a couple of games like Bulls versus Blazers, and which wasn't that bad, but like I said a minute ago, George Form's KO Boxing, terrible. I had a Toxic Crusaders game,
Oh yeah, yeah,
also
yeah.
extremely terrible.
I remember you having that though.
Like you said, Shining Force. I had Shining Force. Echo the Dolphin, which by the way is fantastic.
You had Echo for the Sega CD too, didn't you? The Sega CD
I did
version of
not.
Echo the Dolphin.
There is a
Oh, you
Sega
did?
CD version, but I never had it.
Okay, I had the Dreamcast version.
Right, but that's a completely different game, of course. The
Right.
the Sega CD version is like the same game as the original Echo, just with like a couple like added levels or something like that. Now I'm trying to think if there's anything I can't remember. Oh, Sonic Spinball. Remember that? It was like a pinball game where you were like Sonic.
Yes. That was a fun game.
Oh,
what about?
And then a game that I just told you the other day. There's a game called Ranger X. No one watching this probably knows what that is. I couldn't remember it for the life of me, and I was telling Jacob this the other day, like serendipitously, I was like, "What was that game I had?" I couldn't remember the name, and I thought, "There's no way," because I didn't know what to Google for. You know, like I'll never find it. And like 5 minutes later on my Twitter feed, someone had a picture of it up, and it was like Ranger X for the Sega, and I was like, "Holy crap, here it is!" So that was a cool game.
I don't remember that. I don't remember that game at all. I don't remember it.
Wonder Boy in Monster World or something like that. You remember that game? You're like a little blue haired dude. I had that.
Well, that was Sega's kind of initially. That was kind of going to be their mascot, and there are several Wonder Boy games on the Master System actually.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally thought of something. I was trying to think of something. I had something on my head that I thought you did have, but now I can't think of it.
I mean, I think I had more than we think. Really.
Oh,
Same thing with Nintendo.
did you have Castlevania Bloodlines?
I did. I did. You're right. I forgot about that one too. Like I said, if we went through the whole list, it probably had more than I thought. Just like our Nintendo one, it's like at first we were like, oh, we only had like 4 games, but once you actually look at the list, we had more than we remember. It's just so hard to. It's a long time ago, people. We're old, okay? It's hard to remember.
Well, I thought the other day. The funny thing was the other day I thought of another NES game that we had. We thought we had thought of them all, and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, I was like, "Oh yeah, we have this game." And
what was it?
I don't remember.
You already forgot?
Yeah, I already forgot what it was.
Alzheimer's.
But I thought of it.
Oh,
I thought of it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, we had that game."
Now, to your point a minute ago, yes, I did eventually get the Sega CD as well, which I did ask for. Probably a mistake in hindsight. Not that great, but there was a couple cool games like Sonic CD. I had Sonic CD. We had Shining Force CD. I had a Jurassic Park game, which is actually really fun because it was like a point and click, a point and click adventure. And there was some game. Remember, it was like Corpse Killer or something stupid. It was a shooter game.
It's so terrible.
Did I say Lethal Enforcers already? We had the shooter for Lethal Enforcers. I don't remember if I said that, but I had a game called Dark Wizard on the Sega CD, which, by the way, back then I thought was awesome, and it's kind of like a tactical, like map turn-based strategy game, whatever. Tried to download it in an emulator one time and play it again. No, sir. Terrible. Couldn't even begin to play. But anyway, I mean, that's all the stuff off the top of my head. Now, Sonic CD was cool. Remember the song, the opening theme, you know?
Oh,
Sonic Boom, and he's like running up the chain. You got to remember, guys, games didn't have awesome soundtracks, or at least not, let me rephrase that, CD quality soundtracks.
Right.
And you singing and voices and
like an anime,
full cartoon animation. Yeah, exactly. So when you see that on your home console system, it was pretty awesome back then. In fact, I just saw something the other day. I don't know if you know this, but that Sonic Boom song was like only for like the American version. The Japanese soundtrack is radically different, and I don't like it. But some people think it's awesome and they don't like the Sonic Boom. But anyway, neither here nor there. And I really miss Shining Force, by the way. all the Shining Forces. I missed them a lot, and I wish they would make more games like that, where it's like a dumbed down strategy type game. Because some of the newer strategy games, there's too much new. Like I love Final Fantasy Tactics, which is obviously not new, but there's a lot of strategy and depth in that. And like triangle strategy on the Switch or whatever. Like, Jesus, what do we gotta read or listen to 8,000 hours of dialogue? That game was too long, too much going on. I've rambled for a while. So anyway,
No, I think we did probably have more games than we can remember. And the funny thing was, the big rivalry, Sega versus, and it was out there. It was a thing, but not in my circles. Most everyone had a Nintendo and a Super Nintendo. Like we said, we can't really think of people that had a Genesis, but obviously, widespread, a lot of people did. And Sega, there's a great book. It's called Game Over, and it's about this whole chronicle against, Nintendo and Sega against each other, and uh, the people and their strategies and everything. And it's a very interesting read. And Sega was kind of flopping, and the reason they kind of turned things around was because I think it's Tom Kalinske is his name, and he basically was the president of Sega of America, and he told Sega of Japan, like, listen, you cannot do things the same way you do it in Japan. It's not going to fly. It's not going to work. And he was the one responsible for that big push on sports games and more mature games, and let's go after the older gamer specifically. Whereas Nintendo was still saying not necessarily kids, but they've always maintained we're here for everybody. And Sega was trying to very specifically say, no, no, we're here for the older people. When you get
yeah.
older, you start playing Sega. And so it's a great book, highly recommend. They were supposed to be turning it into a movie actually. And like Seth Rogen was involved with it somehow. I don't know what happened to that. It could be cool, I think, because I love that Tetris movie that they made about the
Yeah, I
story of
haven't watched
everything. How
that. I saw a
Tetris,
clip of that just the other day, and but I
it
haven't
is
seen it.
really good. You should watch it. It is good. I'm sure there's some, obviously there's some Hollywood there. There's some made up stuff probably,
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
um, but it's mostly true because I've heard the story before, and it's pretty good. So it'd be nice to see a movie of that Game Over book. But the Genesis, I mean, we played it. You had it, and I played your games, that you had, and we
Right.
enjoyed Sonic and Sonic Spinball and the different games. And the Sega CD, we were all kind of, CD was supposed to be the next big thing. We got music on CD. We had played some computer games on CD-ROM, so it kind of was like, well, of course I want this Sega CD system. Why wouldn't I?
Right. Yeah.
And there were some good games for it, but it turned out to be mostly crap. And then the next thing you know, they're releasing the 32X, which I don't think you had.
No, I didn't.
No, yeah,
No, I was going to say Smiley did, but I don't think he did. Actually, if I'm remembering right, I think he had. I was thinking of the power of the Tower of Power or whatever everyone always
right.
calls it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it's because he had Sonic 3 or Sonic and Knuckles or something. You could put Sonic and Knuckles
Sonic and
like
Knuckles.
inside of Sonic 3 or something like that. So
Right.
then you could play Knuckles in Sonic 3. He had that. I don't think he had the 32X.
Yeah. And there were even 32X Sega CD games where you had to have the Sega CD and the 32X both.
Yeah. Which, we think is kind of crazy. And it was kind of crazy. And obviously it didn't really pan out of some kind of like a huge success for them. But in some way, it is no different than right now, Sony and Microsoft doing these tiered systems, right? PlayStation
Right.
Pros and, Series X and S for the Microsoft. And people would still argue, the success of those, but it's kind of the same thing to some extent.
Well, I think the problem is support. It's not that the 32X itself was such a terrible thing,
Yeah.
or that the Sega CD was such a terrible thing, but they didn't support it. And there was already a release date for the Saturn, I think, in Japan when the 32X first came out. So it's like,
Yeah. I
I
don't
mean, you
know.
knew it wasn't going to be long for its life, and then they didn't support, and then even the Saturn, it failed once again because it didn't get the proper support, and they did not,
And
release the game
again,
because the Saturn was very successful
did you know
in
anyone with a
Japan.
Saturn?
Man, one person, didn't you borrow it from them?
Yeah, I
Tristan,
did.
right?
No, Bobby.
Bobby Howell?
Yeah, Bobby Howell. Yeah.
Oh,
So no, I borrowed it from Bobby, but he is the only person I know of that had a Sega Saturn
Yeah, I know.
in
I
our
never
in
knew.
our small
Oh,
circle of the world.
actually, Don Leashan had a Saturn,
Don,
and
the Don,
yeah, and he had the 4 mega expansion cart because I remember he had like X Men versus Street Fighter or something like that, and we played it. But that was way later. That was after it had already been out and gone and everything else. And it's just
right?
he had it
Well,
when we
and
lived
again,
together
like
for
you
a short
said,
time.
big success in Japan, not so much here. But a few games I played on it, I mean, Dragon Force and Shining Force 3 were both awesome games that I played on the Saturn. So obviously, I just mentioned only 2 games, but I'm just saying, not
Well,
everything stunk.
right. They had a bunch of good games in America. They did, but a lot of games they did not bring over. They didn't bring over the expansion RAM cart and stuff. And the other problem was the system was built with 2D in mind. And then here comes the PlayStation and N64 with 3D in mind. And it was hard to try to get 3D to happen on the Saturn, and that hurt them too. And then comes the Dreamcast, which I loved my Dreamcast. I think it was a great system. And it basically got screwed by 2 things. One, people were burned by Sega. They're like, "Okay, I mean, I bought the 32X and the Sega CD, the Saturn, and all that happened in a very short period of time, to be honest. We're talking the Dreamcast came out in 1999, the Genesis came out in 1989. So 10 years, within 10 years, all that happened. And people were burned. And then also Sony had a brilliant marketing team. I mean, they just had everyone in the world believing, yeah, you're just gonna be a moron if you don't get a PS2. And I worked, we talked about this before. I worked at GameStop at the time, software, etc. And I had a lot. I tried to get the people to buy the Dreamcast, and people were just like, "Oh, it looks kind of cool, but I'm going to wait on the PS2." And
I mean,
and so that
there was a gap there though between the coming out where obviously the Dreamcast failed to gain ground because you
I
didn't
mean,
work at Software Etc. when we got the Dreamcast,
no, 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 because it
but you
came out
did by the time the PS2 came out. So
right. So yeah, I mean, those are not the only things. There are other reasons, obviously, and EA never jumped
right,
on board, so there weren't EA sports games. Of course, the 2K games.
I was gonna say we didn't need it, baby. NFL
No.
2K blew our minds.
So we own that sports game. You said we didn't own a sports game. We did own that, remember?
That's true. We did. And I remember, as
And
we talked about before, our father, is not a gamer. He saw all the games we played for many years, but I'll always remember NFL 2K and him telling my basketball coach when he was talking to him, he said, "You wouldn't believe it. It's just like watching the thing on TV." And now you go back and look at NFL 2K and you're like, that does not look like what we were watching on TV. But at the time, pretty
right
impressive.
up until that point, though, Sega had some really good games, and I think it's a sad world a little bit that we don't have Sega as a console maker anymore. And we had that small period of time where Sega and Nintendo were kind of pushing each other, and they were the people on the block. I mean, I very specifically remember when the PlayStation was announced in EGM magazine. I read, "Oh, Sony's making a game system," and I was immediately like, "Why?
Yeah.
That's going to fail. Why that's going to fail." I mean,
Losers.
who would buy that instead of a Sega or a Nintendo? I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I thought. And I remember thinking the same thing when Microsoft announced they were going to make a system. Then I was like, okay,
Right.
we've got Nintendo and we got Sony, and everyone hates Windows. So, but a lot of people were sold on that right from the beginning. I mean, I remember I had said something about, us not pushing the GameCube like I thought we ought to. And
Yeah.
the district manager of GameStop was like, "Oh, Microsoft, they're the big gorilla on the corner, and they're going to be." And I'm thinking, like, you don't even know what you're talking about. You know nothing about gaming. I don't know.
But
You know
they
what? I
made
don't
it.
remember her name. Her name was Debbie. I don't remember her last name. So, Debbie, you were an idiot. I'm just saying right here on YouTube. You're a moron. You're never going to see this, but
Oh God, you've just ruined all the goodwill we had with Debbie. She might have been the push. So, I mean, that's all the Sega systems. We've already blown through them all. I'm going to go back in time a little bit real quick. Well, one, I just thought of another game, Fantasy Star 3. I owned Fantasy Star 3, which, if you ask a lot of people, I think is like the worst Fantasy Star. And I played it and enjoyed it, but it's got no candle on Fantasy Star 4, which I did not own, but is a phenomenal game. If you enjoy good, Japanese RPGs, new or not, do yourself a favor, play Phantasy Star 4. But what I was going to talk about that we didn't talk about earlier, real quick, is Sonic. And Sonic's a super popular character. My daughter, she plays games, but she's not like a gamer. And she loves Sonic. She loves watching the movies. Her and I both went to we went to Sonic 2 in the theater together or whatever. We haven't watched Sonic 3 yet, but anyway. But my point is, the games themselves, people talk about loving Sonic, but the original Sonic, even though we played it and liked it at the time, I don't think it's very good,
Mm-hmm.
And part of the big problem for me is that people, his whole thing's supposed to be speed, right? You barely can run in any of the levels. If you start running, you run into spikes or you get hit by something else and you always get stopped. And it's like, damn it, I'm trying to run fast as Sonic and something's always in the way. I don't understand. Now, maybe the modern Sonics are better at that and you get to zoom around everywhere. But I haven't played a Sonic game in 20 years.
I don't think Sonic's that great. I was going to say that too. I think Sonic is kind of like Budweiser beer. A bunch of people are saying they like Budweiser, but they don't. It's garbage. It tastes terrible. But no one wants to admit that. No, I absolutely think that. And we did have fun playing them. Don't get me wrong. We had a good time, and we played them. But no, you're right. I mean, because the whole point is to go fast, but you can't go fast because you're always running into something. And of course, someone might say, "Well, you're not very good." But the thing is, then you get launched into oblivion. You're in that Vegas episode level, and you're just bouncing everywhere and going crazy. You're not really controlling anything. And now I haven't played the games for years either, so maybe they changed. But I remember like Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast. I kind of felt like I was just watching a movie because you control Sonic a little bit, and then he would hit something, and he would go running through the level, and it was just like a cinematic thing. You weren't even controlling Sonic while all this stuff was happening. I'm sure if people were actually listening to us, the comments would be filled with people hating us because
but somebody hated on it for sure,
dogging on Sonic. But I've thought that a lot over the years. It's like,
go ahead, please start
wasn't that
a flame war in the comments. Sonic
it kind of wasn't
versus
that great.
Sonic lovers.
It wasn't that great. And then we were talking about Mortal Kombat earlier. Okay, sure, Mortal Kombat had blood, but the sound was bad. It didn't play the play control. The play control wasn't very good, and most people only had that 3-button controller, which is not enough.
Here
buttons.
Here we go again with the not enough buttons for the fighting games. I think we talked about this twice already, and you're not wrong. Yeah. You're not wrong. I don't. Without the shoulder buttons, I don't understand how you did it, but it is what it is.
Like I said, I think you had to press the select button, and that changed between. Punch. I don't know. I don't
know either. I don't remember.
That 6-button controller.
But I don't know if those Mortal Kombat, the original Mortal Kombat at least, I don't know if it had, because Street Fighter, as you and I talked about, Street Fighter, as you and I talked about earlier, had like I don't remember what they called them, like a weak, medium, strong of punch and kick. So you need 6 buttons for that. I don't know if Mortal Kombat had all 3.
It had
weak, medium, and strong.
High kick and low punch and high punch and block.
So, okay. So you didn't need as many buttons.
Right.
But you needed more than 3. You need more than 3. But the low and the high could have been the same button. You just have to press down to do the low. And that's normal.
Yeah, and maybe they did something like that. I
don't know. Doesn't matter. It had blood, okay? Nobody cares about the controls. It had blood, and you could uppercut somebody off the bridge, and they fall into the spikes.
You had to put a code in, I think, for the blood. And so to kind of appease the parents, you had to go to like the options screen, the code, and then turn on blood.
What was it on the Nintendo version? It was just like sweat. It was just like white or something like that.
Yes.
Oh, he's sweaty. That boy is sweaty.
And they changed some of the fatalities to some different things.
You know what I miss? This is completely off second, just about Mortal Kombat. I miss that first Mortal Kombat, like breaking the stuff. Like you break wood and then metal and then ruby and diamond or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
I kind of forgot about that. So you just now said that.
I just remembered it.
I haven't played Mortal Kombat in years. I know they kind of reset it, and the newest one was just called like Mortal Kombat 1.
Yeah.
But I don't remember which Mortal Kombat it was. It's about the same time that Street Fighter 4 came out. I played it on Steam, and on my gaming computer, and I really enjoyed it because they had really turned up the storytelling on it, like, big time,
Yeah.
and,
They got
it was a good
crazy
game.
though. They got crazy for a while. There were so many characters, and everyone had two fatalities and a babality and a brutality and an animality and a friendship. And it's just like, this is too much. I can't, my mind can't compute all this.
And you remember when we first heard about some of those things and, like, someone and you thought it was
Oh, yeah.
fake? Someone's
Yeah,
like, "Oh,
totally.
you can do a friendship move," and you're like, "Shut
Yeah.
up."
Yeah, right.
No,
Or the babality,
friendship.
turning them into a baby. Why would that even be in the game? And
And it
it was
all
real.
turned
But
out to be
yes,
true.
it was so stupid. Now the animality is kind of cool for some of them, but
Animality.
and the brutalities were like impossible to pull off. You had to like nail like a
Oh, yeah,
super
I
long
forgot about
combo, and
that.
then it just starts going crazy.
Right.
Did you look at that tape I gave you the other day?
I haven't looked at it yet.
Okay, you guys might have remember we said before that we recorded video game endings. Sometimes I found the VHS tape at my mom and dad's and gave it to Jacob because I don't have a VCR. So we'll see if he ever gets around to it. We'll see what's maybe on that tape because it might have had some
I
Mortal
don't
Kombat. We had some Mortal Kombat because
do
remember
you
we did
think
stupid stuff like we put
right.
Mortal Kombat to like a soundtrack and stuff like that. Like what did we do? What did we do with the
So
"You Suck"? We had Shao Kahn being like "You suck" at just the right time for something.
right, for Luke. So when Luke was hanging in Empire Strikes Back and
Yeah,
Vader says, "No, I'm your father," you know,
yeah. We had
and
Vader
that's
say,
not true. That's impossible.
yeah, we had Vader say, "You suck," as Shao Kahn or whatever. No,
And
no,
no,
I don't
we had
suck.
no editing equipment, no computers. We had 2 VCRs, you know, and then, like, we were feeding, like, only the audio cord from the Super Nintendo, like, into the
Yeah,
one VCR is playing another I don't even remember how we did it. We did that, we did the is it
geniuses,
Mellencamp?
man.
Who's that song? I Want You to Dance Naked. And it's like,
I don't know.
"Spin round and
Oh yeah, spin
round
round and
and"
round. Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
we
And we
had,
had Cabal spinning the
yeah,
dude. Yeah, oh, that's so stupid. Or was it Cabal that
I
could
think
make you
so.
spin?
Yeah, I think his name's Cabal.
Yeah, it doesn't
Wasn't that
matter.
him?
But yes, we did stupid stuff. Honestly, thinking back, maybe we should have got into video and audio backgrounds and done things like that because we did all that kind of crap just for fun, and figured out how to do
Well,
it.
I think maybe if we had what they have today, I think me and you might have ended up in those type of careers maybe, but yeah, I'm interested to see what else we put on there because I can't remember. I think the
I
ending of
mean,
Final Fantasy 6 is on there, I think.
probably we
Um,
had we had like Final Fantasy endings, Chrono Trigger, Star Fox, I think,
I feel
some
like maybe we
different
had
stuff.
Yoshi's Island, on there, Super Mario 2, World 2, Yoshi's Island. Oh, because we
Maybe
borrowed that game from Grant, I think.
we did borrow it, but I don't know if I can't say if we recorded the ending or not.
For some reason, I thought I did, but anyways,
That's all right.
I don't know. We strayed a lot on this episode, but
That's
Sega was
okay.
there. I mean, everyone thinks of Sega. I don't think anyone doesn't, and I know there are people out there that have fond memories of their Sega Genesis, and people out there that thought it was way better than the Super Nintendo. But in our
Yeah.
lives, we didn't have a whole lot of that. We owned one, but we still didn't have a whole lot of other people. And
Well, I mean, again, it comes down to the games, right? I have more fond memories of more Super Nintendo games, but I have lots of fond memories still of some of those Sega games. Like I
yeah,
said,
no,
I put
absolutely,
Fantasy Star 4, the Shining Force games, and even Echo the Dolphin are still some of my favorite games and favorite
yeah.
childhood memories. So it
And
it
there's some other
it was
things we're not thinking
it was
of.
still strong. Yeah, there's things we're not thinking of,
I
but
know there's some other
oh,
games
well,
we're not
games
thinking of.
that we didn't own, like Golden Axe. Golden Axe is people love
Oh,
Golden Axe, right?
well, yeah,
People rave about Golden Axe, and it
columns.
was
Remember,
columns.
It was like Tetris,
Yeah,
but
yeah. I don't think I ever even played a columns game. I think I have
well,
played a Golden Axe game, but the point is,
there's
there's
a
tons of games that
games,
we're not talking about that people loved.
comics. It was called Comics Zone. It was like
Yeah,
a
Comic
guy,
Zone. It's like
and
Streets of
then
Rage, right?
kind
Just
of right, but
fighting,
you were like going through comic book pages. It was
right?
impressive, how it looked and everything. Something Heroes,
Gunstar Heroes.
Gunstar Heroes, I think.
Yeah,
Was it? So I mean, there were a bunch of great games in the Sega Genesis. So we're not disparaging it in any way, but we're just saying we didn't actually know a lot of people that had it, and although we did have one, Like we have more games. Yeah, I could think of more games for your PlayStation, I think, than I could of the Genesis.
I don't
When
know.
I think when I
I
think
don't know if
about
I
that.
can. I would have to get to it. We'll save it for another episode since
Yeah.
we've gone long enough already on
Yeah,
this one.
we're,
But
we're, we're running out of time, but so let's just wrap it up. I mean, so if you guys have any fond memories of the Sega Genesis, leave it in the comments below. Let us know about it. If you're one of our friends and you remember a game that we had, tell us down in the comments below. You guys have
yeah,
done that before. We love
tell me what I
hearing.
had.
I heard a YouTuber say the other day, like telling his audience, thank you guys, because if it wasn't for you guys, whether it's two of you or a million of you, we're just talking into the ether if someone's not listening. So we appreciate everyone listening. We appreciate your comments, and we hope to see you in the next one.
Thank you guys. We'll see you.